Welcome back. How we doing, guys? We got somebody special here tonight. I gotta take that down. Anyway, we got another special stream tonight. Do me a favor, tap on the like button. Welcome back to whatever this show is. I'm not sure. We just like to tell stories, right? And we got a very special story to tell tonight. Nuckenfutz Yuri is with us. He's staring over me. It's real creepy. He's back behind me there. But I'm gonna show you some footage first. Before we get there, hit the like button. Oh yeah. Here you go. All right, everybody. We got Mr. Nuckenfutz Yuri. Yuri, you're on with us. What's up, brother? How you doing with that salt and pepper? Oh, I love it.
Good, man. Good.
You just watched Yuri getting blown up by an anti-tank mine. Yuri, you're in Ukraine right now, correct?
Yes.
You are in Ukraine, but you're in a safe. You're a safe spot, essentially. You know, we won't ask exactly where you are, but you're somewhere where you can sit back, chat. Maybe share with us a few stories from what's been going on.
Of course, of course.
So he's already been sharing quite a bit with me. We've been here for the last half an hour or so while, once again, another one of our guests sits patiently while I try to figure out all of our overlays and things like that, you know. But I'm excited that you're here with us. I know it's really late in the evening for you. I want to say it's like 1 a.m, so thanks for being here, you know, first and foremost. Dude, if you wouldn't mind helping people understand who you are, give us the, you know, couple-minute rundown of, you know, who Yuri is up to getting into Ukraine, because I'm sure we're going to get into that stuff, and the floor is yours.
Okay. So if you've not seen my video about why I'm in Ukraine that I posted on my YouTube channel, basically in 2008 or 2007, I meet some Ukrainians. 2008, I come to Ukraine for the first time, just traveling here, fell in love with the country. 2008 to 2012, I was in the U.S. Army. When I got out of the Army, I moved to Ukraine itself. And from 2012 to the end of 2013, I was living solely in Ukraine, and then left Ukraine a few days before the Maidan Revolution, the Revolution of Dignity. And then after that, I came to Ukraine, helped train some guys in 2015, again in 2016, and made the promise that if Ukraine was ever attacked by Russia, I would return to Ukraine and help defend her. So that basically brings us up to February 2022.
So help people understand. You're an American first and foremost, right? You have an American citizenship. Are you a part of the International Legion?
No, I'm actually in the Ukrainian army itself.
So you are what most would consider the equivalent of active duty military for Ukraine.
Yes.
How is that possible?
So foreigners can serve in the Ukrainian military. They just can't serve in high-ranking positions.
Define high ranking. What would that mean?
Officer, general, major, lieutenant. Positions of power and authority is from my understanding. But foreigners can serve in the actual Ukrainian military itself. Just like how if you were born in when I was in the army, we had a guy from the Philippines, we had a guy from Jamaica, and a couple people from somewhere else in South America that they had to actually just come into the country and then enlisted in the military and then served in the U.S. military. So it's basically the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where I was taking that is, essentially you don't have to be an American citizen to join the United States military. It's actually a path to citizenship. Is that something that you're pursuing with Ukraine, is a path to citizenship, or do you have it?
I was actually pursuing citizenship back in 2012, but I didn't have all my paperwork finalized before I left in 2013. And a week after I had left was when the world changed here.
A week after you had left, the world changed.
Yeah, Ukraine had changed. So you had the Revolution of Dignity start off as the protest when Lukashenko wanted to have the Russian, the more Russian-leaning deal instead of the European-leaning deal. And then people started protesting that. So that whole incident that happened in November and December of 2013. So I had actually left country several days prior to that.
And
if I knew that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So yeah, if I knew that that was around the corner, I would have stayed in country.
And when did you get back to Ukraine? Help us just kind of understand the timeline a little bit better, or help me.
Oh yeah. So all of 2004. It wasn't until the spring of 2015 that I was able to return to Ukraine.
Okay.
So when I was living here in Ukraine, I was living here on a visa. I overstayed that visa for a few days. And when I got back to the United States, I was planning on returning in the springtime anyway into Ukraine. I was going to get a new visa and everything, so that I could get the visa and then use that to start my permanent residency and then my citizenship for Ukraine.
Okay, and you, just to simplify and help my brain understand, you are no longer pursuing that path of citizenship?
Oh, no, I still am. Just I don't have to pursue the original path.
Okay.
So since I'm fighting in Ukraine, it's going to open up for me to get citizenship a lot easier here than my original path. I was starting some businesses out here. I was going to go that route.
Okay. So you mentioned active duty military, and helping people understand that differentiation is important, right? Because for obvious reasons, when someone sees an American voice, the first thing that comes to mind is International Legion, volunteer fighting in Ukraine, and ensuring that we're able to make that differentiation ahead of time, or right out of the gate is important. How's the pay? How's the pay? That's a question that I've got.
I get the same base pay as any other Ukrainian soldier on the front line. It's kind of from what is explained to me, it's kind of convoluted where you have the days that you're actually on the 0 line, that's the actual front line itself. So they number these things. So it's like 0, 1, and so on and so on. So when you're on the 0 line, you get X amount of pay, but when you're on, like, let's say I was in Kiev or Lviv or somewhere where it's, you're not near the front line, you don't get as much pay as you would if you were on the front line itself.
Is that a new system since Russia's invasion in 2022, or has that predated the invasion?
I would not know. Okay, so probably back up a little bit. When I got to Ukraine, I actually was part of the International Legion.
Okay.
For the end of March, all of April, all of May, and then I got out of the Legion back in the end of May, and then started mid-June getting into the actual Ukrainian military, and that actually took a bit of time to do. So,
which is from a process perspective, it took time.
Yeah, just from a process expect. So I had to do a physical, I had to do criminal check, I had to do a psychological evaluation. So it wasn't just with the Legion, you went in, you're like, hey, I want to volunteer, I want to help you guys out. They say, okay, great. They do kind of a background check on you. They kind of ask you some questions. You sign a contract, and then they ship you off to Kiev or Kharkiv or wherever you're going to be going.
So it sounds like the pay is, given that technically speaking, the entirety of Ukraine could be considered in a conflict zone, or you would get in the U.S. military hazard pay. Nearly in the entirety, but it sounds like they've refined that even further to where your front line, those that are on the forward line, are receiving kind of the maximum allowable amount of income, and those that are in the rear on rest, recovery, etc., kind of go back to the baseline income. Would that be accurate? Okay.
Yeah, that would be the best of my understanding of the pay situation.
So Ukraine is not the first military experience you have, though, right?
No, I was in the Army from 2008 to 2012.
What'd you do in the U.S. Army?
I was. There's actually a pool going right now, so not an original pool from some of my friends. So they're still trying to guess my MOS.
Yeah, you want to hook a guy up or what?
No. I'm going to reopen it up after this fighting because a lot of them, we're still talking about what I used to do in the U.S. Army. Only a couple of my friends and the people I served with knew what I did.
Is there an MOS for just 50 cal badass? Is that was that one? It's not an MOS that I'm familiar with. For those wondering, the MOS is the Army's military occupational specialty. So your job in the military. We do have a very heavy veteran and active duty military presence, but there's always folks out there that might not fully understand some of the alphabet acronym soup that the military has. So you shared some photos.
It will honestly surprise a lot of people seeing what I've done here and a lot of the stories I'm about to share with you, and then knowing that I was the absolute opposite of that.
I would go with all source intel. I'm going to go with 96 series, now 35 series, just because that's my MOS, and I think it's perfect. Yeah. But I wanted to share the one thing that you asked me, kind of not to. It's not that you asked me not to. It's not that you asked me not to, but I can't not share this now that you said you were looking for something different. I want to give you guys something.
I was looking for the better photo.
No. Here's something that happens in the military all the time, right? When you first join the military, you start to feel quite a bit like a badass. It just happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And you take photos of yourself wearing your gear, and they're the cringiest things to look at later. Well, this is long after your first entry into the military. And still to this day, you're taking cringy photos of yourself in almost kind of the best circumstances. Though, walk us through what's going on here, man.
So I was going to make a Instagram post with this. That's actually a still from one of the videos, and I was trying to get it to work in a way that it wasn't going to work. So I just scrapped that whole idea and it's the only photo I have that has at this moment that I have that has my PAS 13 thermal optic on an AT4. And when I first started rolling out with the reconnaissance unit that I'm with right now, we used to go out at night. We basically only operate at night. And me being able to fire AT4s at night at Russian positions really put my name out there with these guys. So
put your name out there with these guys. So you mean something akin to your reputation,
my reputation with just the unit I was a part of, and then later on, with my battalion. So
I think it's awesome, and I'm jealous, personally.
Yeah,
I've shot one live AT4, and it was at a training range. I was essentially qualified the highest, and I sent that bad boy, and it pinged off the top of the target tank and probably landed in somebody's bushes. I don't know where it went, but it didn't blow up. That was my one experience, and I'm pretty jealous of your. What did you say is on the top of that? That's another system I'm not familiar with.
The PAS 13 thermal. That's the PAS 13 light. I actually have the entire family of thermals, and I brought that with me to Ukraine. Mostly I can put that either on an assault weapon or onto the AT4s.
And that's actually going to lead me into another question that I had for you. From an equipment perspective, we see both extremes all the time. I mean, we see either, bare-ass AKs, or we see the dopest kitted scars, not unlike yours, which I'll be pulling up a photo of here in a minute. Help us understand what kind of unit you're with, and from a logistical perspective, how you receive some of this gear. Because again, it's some pretty advanced stuff relative to a lot of the other things that we see. And I'm going to pull up some photos here for people to roll through while you're talking.
All right. So all my personal kit, my helmet, my Kevlar, my uniforms, all that stuff, that's all provided by me. I've actually been stockpiling that in Ukraine since 2012 when I got out of the Army. The helmet and the body armor, the soft plates and the sappy plates that are inside my plate carrier are brand new, but the plate carrier itself is from my time in Afghanistan. So that was all provided by me. The PAS 13, that is mine. I brought that over from the United States. And the PVS 14s. I had a pair of PVS 14s here in country that went missing when one of my friends borrowed it, and he doesn't know where he put it. And there's some volunteers were able to fundraise for me and get me that PVS 14 that I have on my helmet right now.
You have another photo here that you sent. You actually sent me this a little while ago, and you've got a Gustav next to something straight out of Star Wars. Help us understand what's going on in this photo.
I was going to make a post on my Instagram about it, but what was it, 3 weeks ago now? My commander and I are talking. He wants to know about the AT4s, using the AT4s against Russian positions, and I've been trying to get some M141 bunker defeating munition rockets to take out some Russian positions near where we are operating currently. And he's like, no, we can't get those, despite me asking. And then I tell him, hey, give me a Carl Gustav, and I could really fuck up some shit with the Carl Gustav. And he's like, maybe. And then we find one of our units has a Carl Gustav, but they're not using it. So we're like, hey, can we borrow this? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they give us that, and they give us a whole bunch of rounds. That night, we went on a mission, and I fired off 5 Carl Gustav rounds, and just absolutely destroyed a Russian position with 3 of the rounds. And we're doing the AAR, the after action of the event. We got our thermal drone up flying, and it's videotaping, it's recording me just absolutely putting these rounds into these Russian trenches. And my commander's all happy, and he's like, Yuri, yes. And just kind of in passing, I'm like, you know, if you give me a M224, a 60 millimeter mortar, I can utilize that in the handheld configuration and really fuck up shit. And then the next day he brings me this mortar, and it's not a M224, it's a Polish LNB 2017, if I recall the 3 letters correctly in the front.
I think the nomenclature's right, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Polish 60 millimeter mortar, and he's like, "Here you go," and brings me in like several hundred rounds of 60 millimeter mortar, and I'm showing my guys how to utilize this stuff. But the next day, he just brings me this mortar. Kind of back to your question about the gear and stuff. Ukraine has a 1,000,000-man army at this point in time. It's like 900,000, right? And they don't have enough equipment for all these units to have all this stuff. And units that do that, it's from my experience that units that are doing better, they're more likely to get equipment that they request or equipment that they can utilize more than just some new unit or a unit that's not performing as well. Like my Humvee, you guys saw it got hit by that anti-tank mine, or we hit that anti-tank mine. For about a week, I didn't have a Humvee, and then I got a brand new Humvee. Like they still had the black trash bag stuff on the seats. So.
So I pulled up one that you got me all excited about, and I just found it.
What's that?
The Pokeball. So this is what makes me believe that you're the leader of the nerds. Why did you paint an M67 as a Pokeball? And have you used it yet?
Not yet. I still have it on my vest. I carry it out with me on missions. I'm not going to use. I utilized the M67 since I've painted that, but I want to wait until I can get that on film, me chucking it, and it's just for the laughs, man. Just
I pulled that one back up, and behind it we see the venerable 50 cal. I have a question about your 50.
What's that?
That thing tends to purr when we watch videos of it. And I could tell you, I haven't seen a 50 run that clean in a long time. Do you have to set headspace and timing, or do you guys have the new ones that you don't have to set your headspace?
No, that 50, that one that you see, that photo. So my original 50 cal was produced, I think the guy told me in like 1943 when he ran the serial number. So it's probably been in Europe since that date. And it was imagine. Either something from the Lend-Lease that went to Russia or the Soviet Union, and it's been in a armory in Ukraine, or it probably came from like Belgium or France or Germany or somewhere that had those inside their armory.
I want to play a quick game with chat here, and we're going to give them a few minutes. I'm going to turn on a little bit of music, but I'm going to point something out in your photo. And at some point I'll ask for you to explain what it is, but I'm not going to tell anybody what it is. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What do you guys think this is underneath of the butterfly? Right there. We're going to turn a little bit of music on. I'm going to give them full screen here. That way they get full view of it. If you know, answer it. Why do you have a casing underneath of the butterfly?
Because there's no mechanical safety on that 50 cal.
It's the only way. It's the only way to keep the boom from coming out of the front of it, unless you have it unloaded. But under the circumstances that you're in right now, you typically want to have a belt in. So this is really your best opportunity for a safety, correct?
Yeah, and you see the videos. I'm getting thrown around in that turret a lot.
That's kind of an understatement.
So I kind of don't want to either going to an objective, accidentally pop off around, and then they now know we're coming, or, you know, coming back from the objective. When I first started running in the gun trucks, I was second truck.
Mm-hmm.
So I was right behind the first gun truck. You know, and even though I'm trying to keep, you know, muzzle awareness and, you know, making sure that I don't have that barrel pointed at the truck in front of me, you know, you don't know what's going to happen if we hit raiders or something.
I'm going to pull up, speaking of on objectives, you actually have given us some footage that not many people have seen yet. And I want to show people the second video you sent. It's got to do with the BMPs. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to watch that really quick. And then if you wouldn't mind kind of helping us actually set the stage for us. What are people about to see here? You know, share as much as you want.
All right. So this mission, there was a route that they would push tanks through. So tanks would drive in between the, like, all right, so these are hedgerows you kind of see us go through. Same thing that you had during World War II. And they would have these tanks, and they would drive down this road through these hedgerows. And what we were going to do is we're going to throw out these mines out of the back of a truck. The third Humvee that you see in the video, it's a pickup truck Humvee, and there's an engineer in the back of the pickup truck, and he's going to chuck out these mines as we pass this road. You know, hopefully that a Russian tank would run over it eventually. And so we do the reconnaissance beforehand. We are going from a gray zone, which is just, it's no man's land, right? The Ukrainians don't own it, the Russians don't own it, but, you know, each side can fight within this area. And right as we pass these trees, that's Russian territory. Like, even though that tree line, that's Russian trenches in that area. So, you know, we're on our way to go, you know, throw these anti-tank mines out, you know, trying to wreck the Russians' day. And
well, let's see what happens.
This happened.
Let's see what happens. Coming up for you guys. Let me see if I can work the audio for you guys a little bit here. Seems like my desktop audio might be low or something. All right, let's give it another shot. Nope, that's the best I can do.
Based on that camera.
All right, so what just happened there? Go ahead and talk us through. What I'm going to do is kind of pause it around about here when you call out a BMP. How far out is that from you? What do you think?
See us coming through the hedgerow onto our right. There are two BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles. Probably like what, 50 meters or so away from the road. We have no idea that they were there. They weren't supposed to be there. But very fortunate for us, the crew was not in the BMPs while they were there. Our drone guys got a glimpse of them prior to us coming into the area, but, you know, they weren't able to kind of warn us before we got in there. Yeah. And they kind of watched them as they sat there. Both of the crews of both of those vehicles were in that tree line doing whatever the hell they were doing in that tree line. Freaking sleeping or eating or whatever. So there's nobody in those trucks.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So did you get to the part where we fire at them or no?
Oh, yeah, we got there. And you go to fire a second time, but it looks like you get under concealment from those trees and don't want to send an AT-4 into some bushes.
Yeah. So I mean, if it wasn't for those trees, the first round was an RPG 26. That thing went just a foot over the turret. So if I just aimed it down a little bit more, I would have hit the turret or I would have hit that vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't Battlefield, this isn't Call of Duty, so it's very hard to hit a target.
Yeah, you don't have aim assist.
If you're moving or if you're moving or if they're moving, it's kind of hard. Like when I'm standing still and I know how far the target is, I'm 100% freaking able to engage anything. But if I'm moving or if it's moving, your percentages go down.
So speaking of AT4s though, one of the earliest videos that you had is one that I was hoping we were going to talk about today. And in it, there's a lot of frustration. Rather than set the stage here, what I'd like to do is kind of just show them this video.
All right.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about, but I want to finish real
Go ahead.
quick
Yeah,
thing that's going to kind of open up to some of the other stories that I have. So those two BMPs are just sitting there. There's no fucking crew in them, right? We could have kicked out, if we knew that they were there, and we had dismounts that could drive them, we could have stolen those two BMPs. And there was nothing that the Russians would have been able to do to stop us, right? Just imagine both Humvees taking up positions, raking both of the tree lines, the tree line, to our right and the tree line to our left with the 50 cals. Two dudes run in, start up the BMPs, and then we'll just get the fuck out of there. We would have been able to steal two BMPs. We've actually started a business in just stealing Russian armor. So there was that one video I posted where some of our guys had actually stolen a tank, and we went out to go escort it, bring it back. The other video I showed you, what was it, a week ago, where we went to go steal another tank, but ended up stealing something else.
Tell them the story. Tell them what it was.
All right, we get our commander comes up to us and says, hey, there's this Russian tank in the middle of a field between Russian and Ukrainian forces. You guys are going to go out there and steal it. So we go out on mission. It's in the middle of the night. We sneak up to this tank, and we realize that the track on one of the sides is just fucking thrown or broken or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's no way we're going to be able to drive this tank out of the field. So on the way back to our friendly lines, we kind of get turned around and we wind up going inside of a Russian trench on top of a Hornet anti-tank missile system.
You just wound up in a Russian trench.
So we had to go back. So when we left the tank, we had to go back a certain way so we don't accidentally get shot by our friendly forces.
Mm-hmm.
So we're walking down this trail. We go through this area. Originally, we're supposed to go through this area to this T-junction and then, get the fuck out of there. We kind of got turned around when we were at the tank and ended up walking towards the Russian trenches. And then we ended up walking into a Russian trench that at first we thought it was our trench. When we got in, we saw the Hornet missile system. We're like, we think this is the Russian trench. We saw some Russian MRE trash and some other Russian trash that was on the trench area, and we're like, yeah, we're pretty sure this is a Russian trench. So while we were in the trench, a couple of our guys went out to go, scout the trench out and search for the sentries.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there, there's these Hornet, missiles and those tubes. You have the photo, right?
I'll pull up the photo for everybody right now.
Yeah. So let me know when it's up.
Stand by. There it is.
So these 4 Hornet tubes that you see there, they're inside this little ammo area. And I look at the other guys and I was like, hey, we should fucking take these. We have a Hornet missile, but we don't have ammo for it. So, and I want to fire a Hornet. And the only way I'm going to do that is if we have ammo for it. So I convinced the other guys, let's take these fucking cornets since we can't take a tank. And then they're like, oh, okay, let's take these cornets. Our dudes that were in the trench, they get into a firefight. They chuck some grenades, and they come running back, and we all take off running back towards where the tank is, carrying these fucking cornet missiles. We get
So you guys are lugging these cornet missiles. How heavy are they?
Yeah, they're pretty fucking heavy. They're like 50 pounds, 60 pounds a piece. Somebody on Wikipedia is going to be like, no, they're 82 pounds. But
there will be at least one person.
Yeah,
You just kind of got to prepare
heavy,
for that.
And there's mud. We've been sloshing through it's been raining. The ground hasn't frozen over at this point where I'm at. So, we're going through mud, trying to get these things back to our trenches. And at one point in time, some of the guys were like, no, I'm just going to throw mine down here in the field. I was like, do what you want, but I'm taking this one with me home. The Russian trenches open up, but they're not even shooting at us. They're shooting, but like we're seeing the tracers just going up in the air. Luckily, they didn't have like an ASG, which is an automatic grenade launcher, or AGS, sorry.
Yeah.
An AGS.
We know what you meant.
Automatic grenade launcher, firing at us or anything. We get back to the tank, and then we just make a fucking straight beeline for our trench instead of going the fucking roundabout way. We get into a couple of guys go forward. They're like, hey, the rest of the team's coming through. Don't fucking shoot us. And we get into the trench, get out of our trench, and then go back to where our Humvees were with these freaking, Hornet missiles.
It almost sounds as though you guys got there and you started playing like rock, paper, scissors. This one's mine. Nuh-uh, I called dibs on it first.
No,
shotgun.
You got to carry it back with you if it's yours.
Yeah, lugging 50 pounds worth of gear all the way back. I do have a question, just generally speaking about weather. I'm assuming you're under normal circumstances somewhere in the east. What's the weather like right now? Is it freezing cold? You got gear? You good?
It sucks, man. It could go from it snowed one day, and then the snow melts. It kind of gets warmer, and then it's all muddy and stuff. One of the days we went on a mission, the mission with the Carl Gustav, where I was firing it into the trenches, it fucking rained twice that night. The first night on the way in there, it not pouring rain, but it was like freezing rain. We do our mission, we fire off our freaking Carl Gustav rounds, we get back to the Humvees, we get out of there, and right as we're leaving, it starts raining again. So it sucked.
How's your cold weather kit?
I got everything, man.
Yeah.
Like everything that I've ever had issued to me, like the silks and whatnot, I have all those with me. Yeah.
You got your old like U.S. Army stuff. The undershirts, all that. That's good.
Polypros and stuff.
Polypros, yeah.
Man, I was back in the Army when we had the not the tan ones, the freaking brown, itchy.
Oh, sure. I mean, you and I joined the military at around the same time. I came in 2006. So I've still got marshmallow PTs. The big white poofy sweatshirt, sweatpants stuff. I wear it all the time. It's relaxing attire.
I mean, I wish I brought those. I when I'm back at the base and whatnot. But I got all my polypros. I was in Korea, Fort Drum, New York, Afghanistan. So every time I got to a new duty station, they issued me full new sets of silks and polypros and stuff. But I got all that stuff with me. I got my Gore-Tex. I got all my extreme cold weather, and then I got the stuff that Ukraine has issued me.
Were you a 25 nice. Bravo? I'm gonna win that poll, the pool, dude. Maybe a camo guy of some kind. I don't know. It's something definitely nerdy.
Yeah, it's a nerdy.
I love
MOS.
It. Dangerous nerds, dude. MOS. Dangerous nerds. Speaking of dangerous, so, I want to show this video. We've got to show this because it's one of the earliest. What you guys are about to watch, and I don't mean to redirect us, is one of the earliest introductions that I had to Yuri. We have this titled just basically M2 goes ham on Russian positions. Check this out for a minute, guys.
MO.
It gets me every time. Hold on, I got to pause here. Because I got to ask you a question. Were you upset at all that he handed you an AT4 when you asked for ammo?
Not really. The whole mission, the whole purpose of that mission was the day before, or 2 days before, we had pushed the Russians out of their trenches into that village. And they didn't have any of that village fortified or whatnot. But inside that village they would have either BMPs or BTRs would just be inside that village, and they're just, be on that far end of the village where we assaulted from. And that whole day prior to this, I was training my the dismount that was down there that was passing me ammo. I was training him how to pass me AT4s.
So it's like a muscle memory thing.
Yeah. Like, I scared the shit out of him, and I'm like, look, man, they're going to fire 30mm rounds at us. We're fucking dead if they get into that BTR or that BMP and they turn it on and they swing that turret at us. We're fucking done.
So you conditioned him to end up giving you the AT4 instead of the 50 that you were asking for.
Yeah, I could have been like, hey, I need a bottle of water, and he would still pass me an AT4. Like, it didn't matter what I told him. He was going to give me.
He was giving you a rocket, man. That was coming.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah.
We're gonna finish it. We're gonna finish out the video now. We're only about halfway through it.
All right.
How far would you say that you are from that village? 25 meters?
In that White House? No. We're probably 40, 50 meters from that White House.
Okay.
The AT4s, they armed and they detonated on that house. Both of them.
So there's a part of this when you are popping the feed tray with a Leatherman, and I've seen a couple questions in the chat. Can you kind of walk us through that at all?
The best I can figure is the extractor gets jammed underneath the top cover somehow, and it puts pressure on that top cover, so you can't use your hand to turn that knob to open up the feed tray.
You need the extra leverage.
You need leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah, you need the extra leverage. So, and I know this because this incident happened the 5th or 6th day that I was in the trucks. So I had just gotten into the trucks, and I had figured out, kind of on the first day that after that last round gets fired, there's like a 50 or 80% chance that feed tray is going to jam. And we reduced that, to like, we were using motor oil to lubricate that weapon because we didn't have anything else at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got some commercial, rifle, some commercial gun lube, we kind of reduced the malfunction of that for a while. And then, when my Humvee hit that mine, that 50 cal got destroyed.
So
and,
this lovely purring kitten is no longer with us.
No, she's not. But I do have another 50 cal, and I'll probably be posting some videos. I've been doing a lot of night missions lately, so all you see is the muzzle flash from the 50 cal going on.
My favorite part of this video is the removal of the safety right at the very beginning. And that's actually why I pointed it out earlier, is I wanted to help people understand what you're doing when you pull that spent casing out, is you're removing the safety because it's time to send some hate.
Yeah, and then I like on some of the other comments, they're like, "Oh, he looks like he's re-engaging the safety because I just pick up another shell and I stick it underneath the butterflies as we're driving away." But yeah, that the drive up to that house where you just see me just unloading with that 50 cal, as well as occasionally the AT4s being fired. That's used as B-roll footage here in Ukraine for the news and a lot of these other shows that talk about the war in Ukraine.
Well,
here.
I'm sure it is. It's some that's some high tempo stuff, man. You know, that's the epitome of direct action for us to watch, especially us. We're seeing this at such from the outside looking in under 99% of circumstances, right? So ultimately the value that you bring coming in, taking time out of your literal morning, it's like 1 a.m. for you. I just want to reiterate how much it's appreciated because it's helpful.
No, it's all right.
I actually remember covering this. I was like, this dude is letting her eat on that 50.
Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, short controlled bursts.
Send it.
You guys see what happens when we don't fucking suppress that building. Dudes squirt out the back with freaking rocket launchers. You saw the one where right at the end of that video, you see that rocket flying up into the air?
Let's go back and I'll pull you up
it's like
beside
2 minutes, 45 seconds or something into the video if you're watching the original one.
I don't think we are watching the original. We are watching about a 1 minute 55-second version of it.
Okay, so you guys cut out the end. At the very end, when I reload the 50 cal and I get the rounds back onto that 50 cal and I traverse the turret back around to the houses that we were engaging, I see this dude squirting out with a freaking tube on his shoulder. So, like an RPG-30 or something, right? And I fucking see him aim in and, the round caused the RPG to fire off. So, use your imagination to what had just happened to that guy.
Yikes. Let me see if I can actually pull that up on your YouTube channel. You have that on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's original. It should be original
video. Intense firefight. Ukrainian forces, U.S. gunner. Yeah. I got it right here. I was already here.
I had to do all this stupid fucking titling, like very descriptive titling, because one of the Reddit channels I post on would pull down videos because they're like, oh, it goes against like Rule 3 or something where it's not a descriptive title.
We're gonna wheel forward here a little bit to about 225 since we've seen most leading up to this. Actually, I want to catch right at when we cut off, which is 155.
All right. Yeah, I had to post that in 2 sections through posting it into our group chat. When I originally posted that, you can only post 2 minutes at a time. So I had it in 2 parts, and then my friend just posted the first part onto his Twitter, and that's what caused this to go viral.
And that's probably what we ended up finding and pulling down.
That's what everybody pulled. The news, everybody.
Yeah, a lot of folks think that we edit videos, and under 99% of circumstances, we post what we find. So if that's the first version we ended up finding, the manual crank. Ugh.
Oh man, that turret. So the gearbox on that turret at the beginning was so shit. It would either lock up one way and I can traverse the other, or the vice versa. And the clutch didn't work, so I couldn't just pull that bar and free rotate the turret. Yeah.
So that just happened. Walk us once again through what happens when this RPG, I'm assuming it's an RPG, when that rocket comes at you.
It's a tube. It's like RPG-30 or something. It's the larger tube. It's their version of the AT-4. But instead of a projectile, it's a straight rocket. So I see this dude coming along the side of those buildings. Just for for me, it's it's or in real time it's like a split second, but for like me it's like 5 seconds. So I see this dude coming out, and like I just already had the 50 cal oriented towards him, and I just, you know, let down those butterflies and just start engaging him as he's coming out. Because if you see in the previous scene, you kind of see one of our Humvees going off to the right side of the screen.
Yeah.
So he was going to have this Humvee in like 2 seconds, you know, sighted in.
So basically, you were able to get on him before he was.
Yeah, I was able to get on him before he was even able to bring down that tube. That's why it goes off at that 45-degree angle and then kind of like just disintegrates in air. So, after that, after we went through that village and we finally liberated that village after the Russians left the Kherson area. We actually talked, or our intelligence people talked to the villagers that stayed behind in that village, and they said that we killed 8 guys that day on that assault. So
that was an excellent time to finish that first reload, by the way. That was.
Oh, so normally the turret locks up going left, and I can only traverse it right. That entire day, like just everything, the reload, the fact that I had to turn the turret the left way instead of going the right way, because I was going to start engaging that house again. I probably would not have seen the dude with the RPG. And then the second time we hit that village, in that same area, there's another guy with an RPG-7, and he freaking's pointing it at our Humvee, and it the RPG actually clipped the fence, I believe. Which prevented it from, you know, detonating on us.
So I've got a heavy question for you.
What's that?
Help us understand your why. Why you're doing why you are doing what you're doing. Help us understand.
So, in 2008, I made it my goal to live here in Ukraine. Just for me. I like the people. I like my friends out here. Just the cost of living here is much lower than the United States. So I really just wanted to stay in Ukraine, and started doing some business with some guys out here. There was a huge market in America for a lot of just Soviet military, like souvenirs and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually it's a very niche but very loyal market, you know.
And, you know, I'd have guys that are like, oh, can you find me this spare part for this item, or, you know, this item. And I was actually doing some pretty good business. And then the guys that I was buying stuff from here in Ukraine, they wanted stuff from America, and I was able to find stuff from America, like a lot of Americana stuff, and then bring it to them. So, you know, I was making twice as much for what I was doing out here. Like I was selling them the Americana stuff, getting the value of what the Americana stuff was in the Ukrainian or the Soviet stuff. So if it was like $5 out here in Ukraine, and then I would resell it in America on like eBay or whatever for like $50.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
but then I still took, you know, something that was $5 of Americana out here to Ukraine, and, you know, traded it 1-for-1 for them, right?
Sure.
And then other things like iPads were a huge thing. iPads had just came out, and I have a funny story kind of about that, unrelated. So when the iPad first came out, they were like 3 or 4 times the price here in Ukraine, and all my friends wanted iPads. So like I fly into Ukraine with like 6 iPads, and the rule was, you know, if I had them in the box, or I had the box, or I had all the manuals and stuff, it was treated as brand new, and I had to pay taxes on it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was using it for personal use, you know, like I have this iPad, so I just have the charger or whatever, well, it's clearly personal use. I'm not going to resell, just this. They wouldn't be able to tax me on it. And the customs guy that was here and he was checking my bags, he was like, hey, you have to pay taxes on all these iPads. And I was like, no, they're all personal use. And he was like, no, we know this trick. You're going to resell them here. And I was like, no, I'm not. These are all personal use. He's like, what do you use them for? And I was like, I like to lay them all out and watch different porn on them as they're set up on the bed, just so I can have like choices. And I'm looking him straight in the eye as I'm saying this, and then I was like, do you really want to argue this with me? And he just eventually just was like, all right, fine,
just go as far extreme as you can and own every bit of it.
Yeah it's the grunt way. But
dead ass in the face.
Anyway, yeah. So I fell in love with the country, and like I said, when I moved out here in 2012, I kind of started some businesses. There were some friends of mine that I helped develop some of their business with. So I actually have a lot to lose here if Ukraine falls to Russia, and that's also probably why I'm so fearless while I'm fighting here for Ukraine.
That was kind of where I was going. Where I was going next is, you're already watching the twice now. When we started the stream and with the last couples, there's next to no regard. It's is it a mission first attitude? Is it just trying to get the job done by whatever means possible? Fierce is probably an understatement relative to footage that we see coming from you. Just dive in a little bit. What's your mindset like?
Yeah. So I get the briefing. It's like, hey, we're going to go do this. And then I just kind of focus on what I need to do while I'm out there. The day that we hit that anti-tank mine, like I knew, like when I'm back here, relaxing and stuff, I was like, yeah, I could hit an anti-tank mine. There's the possibility that we're going to hit a mine one of these days. But then I just don't think about it while I'm out there. And then the second we hit that mine, at first I thought we got hit by an RPG. Just, everybody in the vehicle was okay. And you can't see the backside of the vehicle from, where we were. And I just thought that they got a lucky RPG shot off at us. And I was like, oh, okay, everybody's okay. You see me walk out of the Humvee and I'm just looking down and just looking at myself because I'm like, there's no way that I have to be missing a hand or something.
Sure. And so we actually talked about that. One of the things that we suggested as a possibility, and I've talked about this before, is ultimately the Humvee was designed for the theater of war that you're using it in. It's getting more exercise in what it's designed for than it ever has before. It was designed, to defeat, standard Russian type munitions, especially with the up-armoring that went along with it. The explosively formed penetrators that started to be used in, from a terrorism perspective, those were designed specifically to defeat the Humvee. There were a lot of questions, of course, Reddit went up in flames. How would they have survived an anti-tank mine? Well, again, the Humvee is a capable platform and was, quite honestly designed to be fielded against Soviet technology. And that's ultimately what you're fighting against. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. And it's going to blow the Redditors' mind anyway. I wish I had kind of had the foresight of saving that photo. There's a photo on one of the Telegram channels, the Ukrainian war Telegram channel, where one of our up-armored Humvees hit a anti-tank mine with the front left wheel, and everybody walked out of that vehicle okay. Like the engine compartment's all destroyed, but that firewall that divides the crew compartment from the engine compartment, that's still intact. And it just hit the anti-tank mine, and everybody walked out of that.
What do you say to folks that in the West are less than supportive, is a tactful way of putting it, in providing Ukraine more arms? What would you personally want to say to that person?
They get upset. From what I've seen from my comment section, either on my Instagram or my YouTube, they just generally get upset that, oh, we're spending all this money in Ukraine when we should be fixing stuff here at home.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand that the problem that's happening here in Ukraine is compounded since 2008, right? You had the invasion of Georgia by Russia because Georgia wanted to join NATO. So, and then everybody's like, oh, Russia, don't do that, slap them on the wrist. And then Russia blatantly invaded Ukraine, sieged Crimea, and then supported a separatist movement in the east. And like the entire world's like, oh, we're sanctioning some of you businesses. Russia, you're going to learn your lesson. Just don't do it. And then at the beginning, before this even kicked off back in November and December of last year, U.S. is like, hey, Russia, don't do this. We know you're planning on invading Ukraine. We're going to sanction the crap out of you. And then Russia's like, yeah, you are. It's like, they didn't perceive us as a threat, and now we're having to pay for all those years of inaction. And they're like, well, it's a European problem, World War II was a European problem.
Is the world still large enough for a problem in Europe to only be Europe's problem, though?
I mean, the last two European problems that America would say, hey, this is European problems, ballooned way out of control.
That's kind of exactly my point. Is a lot of folks look at this as not my problem, and what I've likened it to in the past is, you're riding on a subway. You yourself might be armed, or you have the capability to defend yourself, and you see, an elderly gentleman or somebody with a little bit less capability than you being absolutely beaten to pieces, and sitting there, maybe even pulling out your phone and recording and saying, that's not my problem, right? When you have all the capability in the world to help. Yes, of course, you have your own problems. We all have our own problems. But quite honestly, sitting back and watching an entire population be targeted and watching, what's happening in Ukraine without providing support, to me, there's a moral aspect to that. That's a personal opinion. Funker530 as a platform is, very much so. Here's the footage. Take from it what you will. So every so often I kind of align some of my personal opinions and views against that footage, and I always need to make sure to say that. But that's what I've likened it to in the past. Were we to not be supportive, generally speaking, continued continued Russian pressure, encroaching further and further west, continuing to invade Europe, to expand to Soviet-era geographical size, is going to continue happening if the United States is not to support, if the West is not to support.
Yeah, if you watch my Why I'm Here video, like the people that I had befriended here, that I was getting them the Americana stuff that they wanted, they were like, oh yeah, Putin's this bad guy. And I was like, how can he be this bad guy, right? Like, I didn't know anything about Putin at the time. And then Georgia happened, and I was like, oh, the things that you guys were saying were kind of making sense. And then, I kind of fell down that rabbit hole about, what was really going on in Eastern Europe. But, if the world didn't step in right now for Ukraine, Russia would have gone all the way, would have taken over the entire Black Sea coast. They would have had a land bridge all the way to Moldova. Moldova would no longer exist as a country because, Moldova is a very small state.
And they already have Transnistria.
Yeah. They would have rolled through Moldova with no problem. That would have put Russia literally on the doorstep of Romania, Hungary, Belarus, Slovakia, and not all of Poland, because Western Ukraine would have held out for a bit longer. You know, Hungary already has. It's not a pro-Russian um, government in Hungary, but they're not really pushing back on Russia like the rest of the European Union and NATO is doing. So,
Sure.
Once, Russia starts putting pressure on Hungary, who's to say Hungary won't just say, hey, you know what, we don't want to be in NATO anymore. Or Russia influences elections around the world. It's, it's an absolute fact. They've admitted it. A lot of other intelligence agencies have come out saying, hey, this is what Russia's been doing. Just imagine what force that they could exert onto parts of Europe, in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening with Russia does not end when Putin ends. So a lot of people's like, oh, if they just take out Putin, everything's going to be different.
Yeah. No, so once upon a time, I was one of those people that would believe that, but to be wholly honest with you, there are a large amount of the Russian population that is very supportive of what Russia is doing in Ukraine right now.
Yeah. I mean, they have their useful idiots on top of, these people that are directly benefiting from how Russia is doing business. And they don't want to change that because then, that's how they benefit. They either stay in power or hold on to their assets, or they make their money that way.
So I want to touch on another kind of a softball, if you will.
All right.
So some of the folks that we've talked to, and I mean, we've seen this on other shows, other interviews, have talked about corruption in Ukraine. We're along the same lines, and I've covered this in the past. It's really not our specialty or our forte. We specialize very much so. That's why we've spent so much time looking at footage tonight on footage, right? I don't claim to be an expert on, Eastern European weapon systems, even Eastern European geopolitics. But corruption is something that we've tried to touch on in the past. Have you experienced, like personally, at a lower level, understanding that you probably don't eat breakfast with Zelensky, unless you do, which is dope. What does he have for breakfast? But have you experienced any issues with equipment going missing? Something that you would consider issues with from a corruption perspective?
When I was with the Legion itself, so when I got into Ukraine. Do you mind if I kind of go into the story about what I was doing in Ukraine, so it kind of like makes sense and flows?
Brother, you got the floor for whatever you want to talk about. Here, it's all yours.
So sorry, guys, for kind of having to go all the way back in this. So I got into Ukraine March 13th. From the March 13th to March 20th or 21st, I had gear supplied here. I had gear stored here in Ukraine. I had friends going out and fighting. I had friends that were relying on gear that I had here that, they didn't have access to. And so I'm coming here, I'm giving out this gear and equipment to these guys. And so from the 13th to, the 21st, let's say, I'm just, doing this stuff. And then, probably the 18th or 19th. And then I tell my friends, it's like, hey, I want to, I gave out all the gear that I got. I want to go out and fight. Let's make this happen. And some of my friends are like, hey, we're going to Kharkiv. These are the guys that were driving around in pickup trucks with javelins and NLAWs and stuff, and just ambushing Russian armor in villages and along the roadway as they were coming in the eastern side of the country. So that whole long, corridor that the Russians could not get into Kiev with, these guys were the guys going out there and destroying these tanks and these supply columns and whatnot. So they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to do this group of stuff. And I was like, well, I need it to be official. I need to have a contract and all that other stuff. And they're like, oh, well, we can't give you that. We can't do that. We can get our commander to write you a note saying that you're authorized to do this stuff with us. So I was like, nah, I'm going to need, something more legal, because, I was really worried about Russia capturing me and then just trying me as a mercenary, right? And so this is the long before Aden and everything too, right?
Sure.
So Mariupol, you know, they hadn't surrounded Mariupol at the time, or there wasn't any real fighting in Mariupol at this time, but I was still concerned about Russia's threats because after Zelensky called for volunteers to come in, which happened, around the same week I left for Ukraine. And Russia's like, hey, all volunteers are going to be treated as foreign mercenaries. I was like, hey, I need a contract. So they're like, oh, the only way that you could do that is going into the Legion. I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to go through the Legion. So I go through the Ukrainian International Legion. Then, I'm in Lviv region. I'm at the base in Yadariv. I'm there for almost a week. Then at the very end of March, right as the counteroffensive in Bucha and Irpin kick off, I'm shipped out to Kiev. Right, so we're like day 2 or 3 of them finding the mass graves in Bucha and whatnot, and I'm already in Kiev. And I was in Kiev the entire month of April. And basically, we were there as a reserve component in case Russia counterattacked or whatever. We would go up to meet them. And there was this what was it? Not Washington Post, but I think Kiev Post article about the Legion, about the corruption in the Legion,
among others. Yeah.
So I knew Sasha. I knew the guy that was in charge. From my understanding, he's not in charge anymore. And a few of the stories actually from there, the female medic, the other individual that had the gun pulled on him, I know those people personally. Like, I wasn't in the room when that stuff was going down, but I never saw any corruption from them loading up cars and them just disappearing, from what people say. But again, it wouldn't surprise me. And that's kind of what happens when you open up you don't have proper accountability. There's been so many weapons that I've been given. So I was given a pistol, I was given an AKS-74U, I was given an FNC, I was given a Scorpion submachine gun, I was given an M249, and no accountability for it. It's like, here, take these weapons. What weapon do you need? What weapon do you want? I'm like, I want this, I want that, I want this. And then I could have been like, well, I don't have that weapon anymore. And then they would have been like, oh, okay. But since then, post, there's been some changes done here. I was given a grenade launcher for a mission, and that grenade launcher was then given back to another person. But when they went to go look for this grenade launcher, they went through the chain of people who had that grenade launcher, and they questioned me about it.
So they have chains of custody or hand receipts in some way.
Yeah.
Something tracking now. Okay.
Yeah, they've changed up a lot of that, or at least in the actual Ukrainian military itself. And then from what I understand from my friends that are still in the Legion, a lot of things have changed from there.
Okay.
But then again, I'm not there, so I can't, firsthand verify any of those facts.
Yeah, I hear you. So what you're saying is essentially when you were with the Legion, you weren't surprised to hear of some of and I use the term corruption just as an umbrella term. Each localized and individual incident deserves its own warranted description.
Investigation.
Just the context surrounding each incident needs to be taken separately. There is a more macro level concern that dates all the way back to the Soviet era. Ukraine was really the source of a lot of Soviet era weapons making their way out across the globe on quote unquote black market. But what we've focused on most intently because I've actually covered, perceptions of corruption in Ukraine over time since the early 90s. And corruption is a perception. If you perceive something as, you have to perceive something as being corrupt, because some norms are different than others. But what we've really focused on the last couple, interviews with folks, with you, with Aiden, with Civdiv, and each of you have touched on this in different ways, is that localized level of, where did this weapon come from? Or where is that going to go? You just asked me for my RPG. Where's it going? I need it. And it just kind of disappears. So situations along those lines. What I took from what you said is, with the Legion, a little bit less structure, at least during your time with it, a little bit more ad hoc from a stand-up perspective. The processes and procedures necessary for tracking logistics would not have been in place yet. But you haven't experienced things like that with the Ukrainian military, which you are now a member of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. So yeah, I don't have that issue with the Ukrainian military. One thing that I want to say about the corruption in Ukraine was, like, again, it comes from the Soviet era times, and then Russia had a lot of influence over Ukraine pre-2014.
Yes, they did. And that's something that people don't focus on at all.
They're like, oh, Ukraine's just this corrupt country, and Russia's this beacon of what exactly? There is a story, and I'm just going to say that it's a story. A Russian unit sold Ukrainian unit small arms, and the Ukrainian unit
this recently
went out. No, this was probably near the beginning of the war.
Okay.
And so some of my friends, they're in the intelligence, circles here in Ukraine. And again, that's really because I've been out here, I've been training with a lot of these guys since 2012, even before people knew that the war was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And all these people that I've trained with, some of them, they're not around anymore. Some of them have honorary titles of Hero of Ukraine. All of them that I've trained with, they're all here fighting, or they've, died fighting here in Ukraine, either from the ATO operations from 2014 to 2022, or, more recently in this invasion. So I'm at one of these guys' houses. This is back when I'm, I won't say where I was at the time, but
please don't.
Yeah, I'm at one of their houses. We're swapping stories. So this is right after I was killed by a tank and perceived to be dead for 24 hours. And I'm telling them this story, and I'll tell you guys this story right after this. But we're there. We're exchanging the story, and we're exchanging another story that one of our other friends was talking about, and then a third friend chimes in. He's like, hey, by the way, this unit, got all these freaking small arms from the Russians. They straight up just sold them the small arms. Like a Russian unit, when you have these larger units, like Russia's not going into war with these fully stocked units, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're supposed to have, like, let's say 400 people. They only have 200 people, right? But then they would, at the beginning of the war, they would still have, like, the equipment for, 400 people. They were supposed to get backfilled with conscripts or, whomever that would come in to fill these units. Well, those didn't happen, but they still had all this equipment. He told me that they straight up just bought this equipment off of these Russians for, like, pennies.
So the story goes, a Ukrainian unit purchased excess equipment that a Russian unit had sometime during the beginning of the war.
Yes.
And you mentioned pennies, so I'm assuming they didn't buy it at its face value.
Yeah, it's like, oh, $18 million, surface to air missile system.
Interesting.
$800. It's like Pawn Stars. Best I can do.
Best I can do is $20.
Yeah. But so back to the me dying.
Oh, sure. We've actually talked with a couple of folks that have died and are now revived in Ukraine, especially those with a public face.
In October, not October, sorry, August 17th. It's on my YouTube channel. It used to be a unlisted video, and I shared it with friends and family. But on August 17th, we went on a mission. The mission kind of went south real quickly, and we ended up having to get out of the village real quickly. And on the way out of the village, we get engaged by a BDM-4 airborne tank. It has a 100mm main gun, and the shell explodes right behind me. And it ended up, in the video I said it ended up killing 2 people. But after I've seen the drone footage and talked with the other guys, there was actually a 3rd person out of our group that was killed from that tank shell as well. But it only exploded, about 6 feet behind me. And the only reason that that I survived was there were 2 guys immediately behind me that just absorbed all that shrapnel and that blast.
They took that hit instead of you.
Yeah. Okay. A piece of shrapnel just shredded my IFAC, and then it threw me through the air and onto the ground. And then my team leader actually got some shrapnel into his chest. And so we're running back. We started getting shelled heavily by grads, by mortars, by 122s, and especially grads with submunitions, which are just absolutely fucking horrific. I get separated from the group. So we were in a 10-man group. We separate into 2 5-man groups. The first 5-man group gets to the village safely. I'm with the second 5-man group. They want to stop, so I'm like, well, I'm just going to go to the village because I'm less than it's 4 kilometers between our village and the other village that we were assaulting, and I was less than a kilometer away from our village. So I'm running through this trench, not a trench, but a irrigation canal. I get to the end of the irrigation canal. I see a Ukrainian laying down there. I thought he was dead. Turns out he was alive. I run to this house where these ambulances were. They had to leave because artillery was about to fall on the village. The village was being shelled in just areas. So there's shell in area, shell in another area. So I was like, okay, fine. So I take off all my gear. I run back to the trench. We start taking artillery again. I'm with the wounded Ukrainian soldier. I pick him up, carry him to the house, and right after we get to the house gets shelled. And, just lands all around the house, doesn't destroy the house. But the last time I was ever seen by anybody, there were 3 teams that went on this assault, my team and 2 other teams. The last time anybody had ever saw me was my team leader from my team when we got separated. When his group went forward and then my group stayed behind because, 1, I had to piss like really bad. And
you gotta go, man.
Yeah, and 2, there was a drone above us, so they see 10 dudes, they're going to try to shell 10 dudes.
Yeah.
So if you have smaller groups, and something that we've kind of picked up on, the smaller groups are less likely to get shelled. So we're less likely
less of a target of opportunity. Yeah.
That's where. Yeah. Exactly. So so they get back to the commander, and they're like, we had lost 2 guys out of our team that day. And then they tell the commander that, Yuri's dead too. Like, first was killed by the tank, and then I was killed by the artillery. Like, nobody knew how I was dead, but I wasn't at the rally point when everybody was getting ready to leave. Like, they all get there, half the dudes half of our guys got injured by shrapnel at some point. So they get, they're like, we don't know where Yuri is. We can't get a hold of Yuri. But what had happened was I had found that Ukrainian guy. I carried him to the house. I waited until the artillery stopped. And I waited until like all the artillery stopped. So it was like a good hour before I ventured out of the house again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I leave out of the house. I go to where I knew where the Ukrainians were in the village. And I go to their command post, and at this time, like, I don't have anybody's phone number. I don't have anybody's, I have my commander's call sign. I'm like, hey, my commander is this guy, right? And at the time, I didn't even know what unit I was because I had been transferred to several different units at this time, right? So I didn't know what my unit was. And it's kind of like, you being in the military, it's weird hearing that, right?
It is a bit. So I wasn't going to say much, but please go on. Go on. This kind of blowing my mind.
You get to your duty station. You're like, oh, you're going to Fort Drum, so you're 10th Mountain.
Yeah.
So there was no duty station for me. There was no, this is your home base. It's, here's the unit you're with. Here's the guys you're with. It says in my military ID.
Well, to an extent, I've dealt with that with the U.S. military before as well. It's like, hey, you're going to be transferring to, like you said, the 10th Mountain, but you don't necessarily know who your down trace is or who, where exactly you're going to go. 10th Mountain's big. It's big. It's complex.
So I know the battalion I'm in, but everybody's in this battalion from the area we're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the brigade. So I know where I'm with these same guys, but I don't know what, my company, what my platoon is or anything. So they're like, okay, we're going to take you to the hospital. They take me to the hospital to get checked out. The intelligence guys come in, they talk to me for a little bit. And then they're like, well, the best we can do is we can take you back to Mykolaiv. And I was like, okay, all I need you guys to do is just take me back to my barracks in Mykolaiv, and, that's all I need. And at this time, I don't bring my cell phone with me on missions. So I have no way of just contacting anybody.
And, are you guys typically sanitizing yourself before you go on missions from, wedding rings, things along those lines? Yeah.
So, okay. I carry a cell phone on me now, but it's not my cell phone. It's a cell phone with a SIM, because there's times where I need to send or receive a data packet. And since we don't have like ASIPs, we don't have, all these high speed,
you don't just have Blue Force Tracker that you can fire up and say, okay, there are, it's a little bit more, and I actually wouldn't call it rudimentary, right? You guys, we've seen footage of the Ukrainian military using some pretty experimental type stuff. Everything from like augmented reality to help with friendly identification to, I mean, when you're fighting in a near peer type situation, being first to bleeding edge is going to be important in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we got apps that, I had to give my phone to somebody who would plug it into a computer to pull this program on my phone to operate this app so I can do stuff on my phone.
Interesting. A side-loaded app.
Yeah.
From a development perspective, my brain is working through the complexity to that.
So, yeah, so there's apps for, to call an artillery support, to do a lot of things, that Ukraine military doesn't have the commo, infrastructure to do.
Yeah, they're using a lot of COTS, commercial off-the-shelf type products, from a mission command perspective, rather than some form of a GOTS solution that's developed on behalf of government for government that is closed to the public for use, like a Blue Force Tracker. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I have no way of contacting these guys. They all think I'm dead, and I just walk into the barracks. and
Hey
one of the
guys, I'm
guys on the
back.
phone. Yeah, literally, it's just like that. One of the guys is in the bathroom taking a shit. Another guy's on the phone with our team. So not our whole team didn't just live in one apartment or one location. We spread out, right? So he's on the phone with another guy, and he's like, Yuri just came back, and the guy that's in the fucking bathroom taking a shit. And he's like, you're fucking kidding me. And he's like, no, Yuri's right here. And I shout out to the guy in the bathroom. And he comes out of the bathroom. And he like just fucking grabs me. And I was like, yeah, I noticed you didn't wash your hands.
Yeah, you
So
can't
yeah,
hate him for it, man. You can't hate him for it.
yeah.
He was
So
excited to see you.
they're all telling me this story about, oh, we heard that the tank killed you, and oh, we heard that you got killed by artillery and all this other stuff, and they didn't know where you were, and we were going to go find your body. They were preparing a team to go out that night to go look for my
Interesting.
body because they thought that I was still dead or injured on the field.
In the army, or in the in the U.S. military, each of the branches has their own version of it. The ethos, right? I'm sure you remember
Mm-hmm.
those. Never leave a fallen comrade. Does Ukraine operate in a similar fashion?
Yeah. So out of that mission, only one of the bodies we were able to take with us back. The three guys that died behind me, we were 500 meters away from that village when that tank opened up on us. Uh, so there was no way we could carry those bodies back with us or even do anything like that. When we recaptured that village after Kherson fell, we found two of the three bodies, and they just left them out in the field.
Okay.
And this was August, September, October, November. Yeah, 3 months of them just in those fields.
There's
Um,
one thing we're actually coming up on the end of what I would consider to be our time slot, but we can just continue talking as long
yeah.
as you like. There's a question that I have while we're on the kind of almost on the subject, and I'm going to show them the footage of you guys taking Russian POWs.
Okay.
How often do you encounter Russians directly, even in a POW stance? And what's your take on the Russian military's state as you are fighting or just encountering them, taking them captive, etc.?
So the mission where I was shot by the tank, we actually, when we went into that village, we captured two of them. They were asleep in their bunk. If they were manning the tank that was right by their building, they would have just slaughtered us on the way into the village. And then we found out that those guys were VDV soldiers, or the Russian airborne. The higher trained they are, the more formidable of a fighter they are. But when you got the lower trained, like the LNR, the DNR guys, the conscripts and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
they, like I told you prior to this, that video you guys see of them taking prisoners, one dude decided that he wanted to fight while everybody else in that trench, like 15 people, decided to surrender. And this isn't the incident with the like the guy that they surrendered and that one guy came out shooting, right? Like our guy, we hit the trenches with the gun trucks and the 50 cals. Our guys came into the trenches, throwing hand grenades and using assault weapons and stuff like this. One dude just shoots back and he just gets absolutely dumped on, and then everybody else is like, you know what, we kind of don't want to die here, and they all just surrendered.
So that's the situation that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
And the video's full screen for them to watch. So this is post that one guy deciding he didn't want to surrender. The rest of these dudes basically threw their hands up and said no thanks.
Yeah. So basically, the Humvees go in, they hit the position in order to offload our assault team. Our assault team goes through the trenches, clearing the trenches as the Humvees are driving away. And then what ends up happening is our assault team secures these POWs. The Humvees come back. They load up all the POWs into the Humvees, and then the Humvees drive away.
How familiar are you of the situation where a Russian POW opened up on the Ukrainian soldiers and a video cut happens? For us, I'm giving you our perspective, right? So take that for what it's worth. A video cut happens, and then all we see left are dead Russians. How familiar are you with that incident?
I've seen the same video you guys have seen.
Okay.
But mostly it was forwarded to me from pro-Russian guys that are either following me on Instagram or on YouTube, and like, oh, Ukraine's just doing all these war crimes, and I was like, are they though?
What are your thoughts on that specific instance? And people need to everybody needs to.
I mean, we had a guy on the ground prone with a PKM in front of those guys that were prone on the ground, and then this guy comes out shooting, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what happened. Maybe the other Russians, they just jumped up in panic, or what had happened. Which, even if a couple of the guys just jump up in panic because they're shooting, those guys might perceive them as also having weapons, because they're not getting patted down while they're coming out of wherever they were hiding from. They're just coming out, hands up, and getting on the ground. So again, it's this huge murky thing. When I was in Afghanistan, our unit shot up a whole bunch of A&P because one A&P was playing around with his AK during a meeting and fired off into the ground. We had that one high-ranking officer in Kabul that was killed by blue on blue, if you recall.
I think so.
A lieutenant colonel or somebody, it's like high-ranking officer, was killed by an A&P like a week before this incident happened. So we were all on edge. So when this A&P guy that's on the other side of this room just decides to play with his AK and desk pops the floor, it caused 4 or 5 of his dudes to get killed because our guys were all on edge. So I mean, even dealing with the Russians, as close as they are there, it's a very stressful situation there.
So in your mind, I'm assuming the other members of your unit have seen that video. Is there a reaction from them at all to that? I think you've kind of explained from your perspective. You have seen similar things happen in the past. You mentioned something, the Afghanistan story, right?
Yeah.
I have been in Afghanistan when members of my unit were killed in blue on green, green on blue attacks. But is there discussion amongst the Ukrainian military on the treatment of POWs, or is, generally speaking, it just is accepted that you guys are going to treat POWs appropriately per what the requirements of you are, specifically the law of armed conflict or international law? Is it just accepted that that's the case, or is there an active discussion? Is really what I'm kind of driving into here.
I mean, there's active. When we take POWs, we understand that if Ukraine's just going out and committing these war crimes against Russia, even though Russia's committing war crimes against us, we're going to lose a lot of the support that we get from the West, and it's kind of really hard to justify, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we've taken POWs, there's they get manhandled. You see in that video, you showed the video already or
I
not?
did. Yeah, you threw him into the back.
Yeah, you threw him in the back
Like
of the Humvee.
you picked a
I mean,
grown-ass man up and threw him into the trunk. Yeah.
yeah. The reasoning for this is we have 2 minutes on station before artillery falls on us, provided that artillery got called, right? So if they have a drone in the air and saying, "Oh, the Humvees are back. They're at this predetermined position," we got 2 minutes before artillery rounds start falling on us, and we know this. So we're not gonna baby these guys getting them into the Humvee. We're not going to, but then at the same time, we're not just going to like tie them behind the Humvee and just drag them while we're getting them out of there. So, and then again, we had multiple Humvees, and you only saw 4 guys out of the group of a dozen or so that we took prisoner and threw them into the Humvee. They get medical treatment. We shake them down, we search them to make sure that they're not concealing anything on their persons, and then we just pass them off to the intelligence guys afterwards.
And I think some of the things I oftentimes see because we have covered and we did talk about that video. What you're actually seeing, for those that aren't familiar, in that video is first an act of perfidy, which is against Article 37 of the Geneva Convention. An act of perfidy is ultimately turning on your captors, right? Raising the white flag and then using the ruse of a white flag to turn on your captors. So what you first see is an act of perfidy, and then a whole murky mess of a situation afterwards, where the video cuts and the rest of the Russian POWs are dead. And what people tend to go to, first off, if, not saying that this is a 50-50 thing, because I've actually never met somebody like in person, like actually in person, that is like pro-Russia. I'm almost positive it's like a Twitter, YouTube, Instagramism. What you're actually... the situation is so much more complex. And what I think I'm trying to go for here is to help people understand that there were a lot of questions about that. But for those that are, generally supportive of Ukraine, one of the things that they mention is, well, Russia did it first. And this is going right back to what you said, Yuri. That doesn't necessarily mean that the mistreatment of POWs in any instance is okay. Let's go with what my grandma told me, which is an eye for an eye makes everybody blind, or 2 wrongs don't make a right. So the reason I wanted to ask that question of you, Yuri, is just get a better understanding from a POW treatment perspective, the thoughts coming from somebody in the Ukrainian military. Does that make sense? It took me a second to gather my thoughts there.
Yeah.
Okay. So and that's a similar narrative that I've used before. Is you talked about support waning in the West. Were you guys to stoop to the same level of POW treatment? We've seen other examples from Ukraine, infinitely more from Russia. Really from the operational, strategic operational level down to the tactical level. I watched a video, and I'll continue to raise awareness on it. I watched a video of a Ukrainian man's balls getting chopped off. That was like. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that too much, but it is something. Given that you provided this footage of POWs, you have it hands-on with Russian POWs. I wanted just to get your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and then they're also a great source of intel. So the same village where we captured the 2 Russians that were sleeping. The fact that we woke them up and then we took them out of the thing because they're intelligent. We could have just slit their throats while they slept, and then moved on through the village.
Mm-hmm.
But when we got them out and we're like, "Hey, how many are you in the village?" They're like, "There's 200 VDV here." We're like, "I think we're kind of over our head in this."
So you actually bring
incident.
up a good point. You don't always have the opportunity to take POWs, and under certain circumstances, had you guys decided that to keep yourself from compromise, it was better situationally to achieve whatever mission it was. Handling that threat before they ever woke up would have been something within your wheelhouse to do. I'm just going to be honest. That's why war's gross.
Yeah, I mean, in kind of hindsight, I think that's what we were going to do in the village, because the whole purpose was, hey, there's only 20 Russians in this village. The village is not that large. It's only like a kilometer long, and there's only like 24 houses that the Russians could be in. And some of these houses have already been hit by Ukrainian artillery, so they're not going to have people sleeping in there. We were going to just go in, 3 groups worth of guys without, telling how many numbers we had, which far outseeded the number of what was supposed to be in that village. We were just going to wipe them out and then have the Ukrainian army come through. And this is not the first time we snatched Russians sleeping from their beds. And I got a couple more stories that I couldn't even tell about this, including the last foot mission I did prior to coming out to the east, and a couple days prior to me being put into the Humvees.
Well, there's a differentiation before people take words get picked apart on the internet. It's a function of the internet. There's a differentiation between somebody surrendering under a white flag and an active combatant. And until somebody surrenders under a white flag, and I say somebody, don't twist my words, until the opposing party surrenders under a white flag, they are an active combatant. So
yes,
war's gross. It's also sometimes funny.
Oh man.
Yeah, let's summarize tonight. We've shown the cringiest picture that you've sent me, which was that picture of you with an AT4. It's a badass photo. And really,
if you're 12 years old,
that's kind of where I'm going with this. If you haven't experienced being a fresh new, basic training graduate, fresh with all of your equipment, you're not going to understand why that photo feels cringy to us. But it does, and it is. Yeah. And I told him that once he sent it to me, I was gonna show you guys. We've also seen the Pokeball.
Like I said, originally it was going to go on my Instagram. It would have been a hit with, the kids and the Fortnite players and the Call of Duty guys.
Oh, I'd have made fun of you.
Like the content that it was going to be, but, it didn't really work out the way I wanted, so I never ended up making that.
I'd have had no basis to make fun of you, but I absolutely would have. I absolutely would have. But I would have gotten a ton of "What are you doing now?" kind of comments, but you wouldn't understand. That one is one that he would know that him being berated by others who have taken similar pictures of themselves. Let's just put it that way. I've got a picture of me wearing Miles gear, like holding my rifle up in the air, like some kind of badass.
Yeah.
Yuri, I want to give you an opportunity. We've talked about your exploits. We've talked about everything so much. We've covered a gamut of topics. Your 50 cal, which now that I know that the 50 cal that we saw purring is gone, I'm a little bit disappointed. But I'm happy you got another one. We've talked about some of your equipment. We've talked about logistics. We talked about some tough topics, which are things like corruption, handling of POWs. But what I want to give folks the opportunity to do is help us understand how to support you where we can. Give us somewhere we can point folks to. If you've got links and want to drop them in our chat, I can post them. How can we help you?
All right.
What do you need?
All right. So first off, I've started my own team out here. Just a lot of stuff that's been going down with the whole Carl Gustav and getting mortars, and a lot of crazy, hey, let's steal some tanks, let's steal some Hornet missiles. My commander's kind of given me the green light to start my own team. So I've been recruiting some guys that I know, some guys that I've served with here in Ukraine. We've been fundraising for some vehicles for us. We're going to start fundraising we need some night vision equipment. My unit does have some night vision equipment, but a lot of it is stuff that's been brought in from like our guys. They bought in their own night vision, or our unit was, like everywhere in Ukraine, we're under, supplied in some of the more critical aspects. So I've been running my PayPal account for donations. I have an address, a PO box set up in the United States where I'm literally taking any military equipment that you guys might have had, like pouches. I got a guy, he sent me some vests, some IOTV vests. Those are
The big
old
ones.
school one. Yeah, the big ones that like the triple holders. And I was like, bro, I will take everything. So military equipment, things that we need is wet weather gear more than anything. Ukraine has some okay wet weather gear, but it's not comparable to what I had in the army. So
where can people go to support that directly?
I will send you the links. Okay. Most of my videos now have them, so I have the address. It's a PO box based out in Temecula. I got some people out there that will accept the donations. They will set it out for me. I'll let them know what I need to have shipped out. I just had a team member of mine get a whole bunch of stuff out here to me, and I should be having it here shortly. I got more stuff coming out, more stuff being shipped out here from donations, PayPal, direct deposit donations. So it's greatly appreciated as well. That way we even though I roll around in a Humvee, I just can't take that Humvee, into the city near where our base is. One, it's too high profile, and two, it's a drive to take that Humvee there in order just to go to the store to get some supplies, or even to go to the post office in the city, because we got stuff coming to us all the time that either being ordered or delivered to us. So donating for vehicles as well as some optics for our group.
So a great place for folks to start, if you're linking a lot of that stuff in your videos already, is going to be your YouTube channel then.
Yes.
So we do have a link to Yuri's YouTube channel down in the stream description. So if you guys click on the stream description, there's a link right there at the top for you. Go over there and hit the subscribe button. Because at a very minimum, if you want some better insight on what the forward-most deployed units in Ukraine are doing, Yuri's footage provides the best insight to that anybody could provide, if I'm being quite honest. What do you have for us in closing, Yuri? I
have hours of footage from my time in Mykolaiv and Kherson region. I'm still kind of testing the waters on how I want to release that. Like my first video got released with me firing AT-4s, and everybody's like speculating, oh, it's because he doesn't speak the language, or they heard NLAW, so they gave him an AT-4. So I kind of want to have everybody understand, like the video with the BMPs. I kind of wanted to leave that without any context for you, and then I'll be uploading a video explaining that, shortly. But I got some more combat footage I want to release. I got some other footage, like I don't see a NSV disassembly video on YouTube, or at least one in English. I got one of those in the works.
I've seen your Stinger how-to video. If I ever get my hands on a Stinger, I now know how to use it. Yeah.
I actually learned how to use the Stinger post-Army. A buddy of mine was running the digital training range for the Stinger, and actually that's where that Stinger came from. I got it off of him for some work I did for him. I own a machine shop out in California, and I did some work for him. But the RPG-7's even with the Carl Gustaf RPG-7, still hands down my most favorite weapon system. I got an absolute complete breakdown of the RPG-7, including I opened up a booster so I show you guys really how the RPG-7 is fired. Looking forward to getting that, uploaded. But again, I mean, we've been talking for what, over a week or so, trying to find a date and time and when I can meet. I still got some other reporters that want to do interviews of me, and it's kind of really difficult. When I got out here to the east, I've been out here for over a month, and I've only had like 6 days of break. Every other, every other day since I've been out here has been on mission, going on missions, and then the Humvee getting stuck in the mud after a mission. I posted that after I found out one of the engineers or somebody else had posted the video from my Humvee getting stuck in the mud, and you actually see me in the video. So I decided I was going to post that. The anti-tank mine video was never going to get released until about around now anyway.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for that drone footage, and then everybody on Reddit is like, "Oh, I hope it's not Yuri," and I was like, "Yeah,
it was me, but I'm fine."
I'm fine.
I remember all the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, I just took some shrapnel in the legs. I had like a piece of shrapnel about yay long just sticking out of my knee, and I was like, "Oh, neat." Yeah, I got some more. I got tons of combat footage. Almost all of it's just basically from the Humvee. I don't do a lot of the combat footage when I'm on foot, and that's only really because I had a camera. It doesn't really pick up well in low light situations, and
most of your foot patrols are low light.
Yeah, most of my foot patrols are in the middle of the night. I have a PVS. I've ordered a camera. It didn't work. Ordered another one. It worked for a little bit, but it's a PVS camera that clips onto the PVS 14, and I haven't been able to find one that works. They're either sold out or the ones that I get don't work.
Well, when we do post your footage, we typically embed it. So that means that when you guys watch it on the website, it's providing views straight back to his channel, and that's just something that we try to do as often as possible when you post something, is embed it. And like I said, folks, there is a link to Yuri's channel in the stream description. And it sounds like you got a lot of footage to go through, but not a whole lot of time to do it.
Yeah.
Well, let us know if you need help.
I got a 1 TB hard drive right now, and it's about halfway filled with just combat footage. A lot of it's B-roll of me just... the camera starts rolling right before we get to the mission area, and then it just continues rolling until we leave.
Well, if you need some help, brother, and we can talk about this offline, let us know. Right? I know you're strapped for time, but that's what we do.
Yeah.
Is review and manage combat footage.
Anything
else?
I got a lot of stuff that has faces on it that I need to, censor out and stuff too. So
Sure. Yeah. So we've done that kind of work in the past. Just taking guidance off of you, allowing you to maintain what it is that you should be doing, which is keeping your head down and not playing chicken with Russian rockets and 50 cals.
And tank shells, and I was underneath a danger close M777 assault, or not assault, but a M777 bombardment. We had no idea that was coming in. I got stories for days, man. I've been, like I said, it was late June that I got into the Ukrainian military, and from June to mid-July, I was doing a lot of training. I was training a lot of Ukrainian soldiers on the AT-4s and stuff. Like, I was actually in Bakhmut in June, and when we left Bakhmut, we stopped at the side of the road restaurant, and we drive past that now on our way to when we go on our missions, and it's bombed out. Like, I remember talking to one of my team members that was here at the time, and I was like, "Hey, you remember when we ate over there and this shit happened?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, that place just got bombed out." And he looks out the window and he's like, "Fuck, man, we were only here a few months ago." But anyway, yeah, so mid-July to now, it's I got hours worth of just stories and things that have gone down.
Well, like I said, dude, let us know how we can help you, man. But I think we're coming to a close here. And, like I said, man, you're still in Ukraine. We purposely have not talked about where you are typically or where you are now. That question has come up a couple times, since we've been hanging out here. And it's for a reason.
Here's my GPS coordinates.
Yeah. Can I get a 10-digit grid on your location, please?
Yeah, here's where I'm at. No, but another funny thing is, other than artillery, like outside of the tactical level, like strategic level, you know how the United States, like if they get intelligence within an hour, they can put a bomb on top of a target, right?
Yeah.
Now, the same thing with Russia, but it's like a week, 3 days, 4 days before. Yeah.
Flashbang time is a little bit lower, a little bit slower.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot slower. So I could say this is where I'm at right now, and then tomorrow when I leave here, it's not going to matter. They're just going to hit an empty building.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. Like I said, thanks for coming on, and I'll be checking in on you now that I've got a way to contact you, just to make sure you're still around, to be honest with you. Let me know when you'd like to come back on, hang out with us, give us some updated stories after you release some of that good footage. And thanks for being here, dude. Like, we're on the outside looking in, so providing the perspective on the ground is just nothing but value. Thanks, man.
Well, appreciate you taking out the time and reaching out to me.
Of
course. I've been watching you. Like I said, I've been watching you guys for over a decade. There's even even a lot of the guys I trained out here watch a lot of your guys' video. There's a machine gun video, a guy with an M249 in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I have the exact same voice when we're shouting.
Yeah.
And people are asking me if that was me in Afghanistan. But he has a tattoo on his hand. I was like, no, that's not me, man.
It's so cool to run into people. I'm one of the newest members of the Funker team, but Funker has been around since 2007. And, I run into people all the time that are just like, hey, I've been watching Funker since, 2008, 2009. I watched Funker videos before my first deployment. We all huddled around a laptop and watched videos of Afghanistan before we went into theater. The impact that the Funker team, which again long predates me, I'm not speaking in any way to myself here, on helping people understand what war looks like, doing our best to be as objective and neutral in the respect that we just want to show footage. Even footage itself, though, just to cover down on something, is still a two-dimensional view of what's happening on the ground. You get the context of 60 seconds, 75 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe. So there's still so much more context that is necessary to the footage. And in comes this show and what we want to do with this, which is talk to the yous of the world that are on ground, that can provide that additional insight and value to the two-dimensional video that we just watched. So, again, sir, I thank you for being here. Please keep your head down. Handle your shit as we know you will. And we'll be looking out for the next video release, sir.
All right.
Thanks, Yuri. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Clear.
All right, guys. That was an awesome discussion. Bye-bye, Yuri. I love you, sir. It was an awesome time speaking with you. What absolute badass Yuri is. I'm going to close things out here. Thanks for joining us for a little while. We talked about some funny stuff. We talked about some heavy stuff. Kind of went up and down on a roller coaster of a ride tonight. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to head over to the other stream now. Kick back, have a drink. I'll probably pop open that bottle of bourbon there and just relax. I appreciate you. I do need to go through some of the support that came in while we were live, though. Sinister, thanks for becoming a member. Daniel, thanks for the 10. Seal, thank you for the $10. Ron, it's still the Soviets changing their name. Didn't all of a sudden not make their government not communist anymore? Leopards can't change their spots. Great point. Torek, thank you for the $5. Timothy, thank you for the 11 months. James for 10 months. My Cherry for 10 months. Adam, thank you for 6 months. Lead with Love, thank you for $10. U.S. Navy Vet and Grandma sends love and support. Thank you very much for that. Defender24, thanks for the 1263. Thanks to people like Yuri. Ukraine will know peace next year. Good luck and stay safe. The B Knight 3 sent in $5 to Yuri. We didn't get a chance to talk about his trenches. The conversation kind of just took itself there for a little while. Defender24, thanks for the 631 before that. And that's it for me tonight, guys. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you guys on Friday for some more footage. Until then, stay informed.